At the start we see Ian, who is driving his white car and heading towards jungle and arrives at car parking. He sits in his car and checks his phone to find many missed calls, and he looks nervous. Ian does not like company and wants to alone go on trekking in the jungle away from the city. He notices some cars are parked, which means there are other people also here. Suddenly a woman taps his glass window and tells him that she has put many traps in jungle to catch birds. She tells him to be careful and goes away from there, and we see the trek is called Loop Track. Ian takes his luggage and goes in the forest and begins his trekking. After some walking, he gets tired and finds a signboard which has names of places to rest and time to reach them. He decides to go towards a place called Kiwi Hut and starts walking towards it. Later, he checks his leg and finds it has a blister and applies some bandage and decides to rest. After some time, he starts walking again and sees a couple named Monica and Austin in the forest. They are clicking their pictures and Ian notices them and decides to wait so they can go ahead. Ian does not want to interact with them and hides nearby so they don't see him and decides to wait. After waiting for some time, Ian decides to take a different route and goes ahead of them without them noticing. Suddenly, the couple decide to continue their trek and Ian sees this and runs ahead so they don't see him. He hides in a bush and Monica decides to take a picture with some flowers near the bush. She takes her photo and leaves without noticing Ian, which makes him happy, and he comes out. He decides to rest and eat something, but suddenly another trekker named Nick comes and meets him. Ian gets scared on seeing him and decides to quickly leave from there, but Nick starts talking. He says he saw Ian 30 minutes ago and decided to follow him and catch up to him. They both introduce themselves to each other and Nick asks if Ian is doing trekking for first time here. Ian says yes and Nick suggests they should trek together as they both are alone in the jungle. Ian tries to avoid him and go alone on his trek, but Nick convinces him to trek together. They both start trekking and we see Nick talks a lot whereas Ian talks very less and is shy. Nick asks Ian what he does for a living and Ian says he had a business which he closed and came here. Nick tells Ian about his girlfriend who cheated on him and hence they broke off. It is night and they arrive at Kiwi Hut and see there are lights on, meaning there are other people here. Ian is not happy and says he will go to the next hut, but Nick says it is more than 10 hours ahead. They decide to stay here and Ian sees his blister is getting worse and he is in pain. They go inside and meet the same couple from before, Austin and Monica, and introduce themselves. Monica asks Ian if they have met before somewhere, but Ian replies no and decides to find a bed. Later, Ian cooks his dinner and asks Nick if other people will come here at night. Nick says it's too late for anyone to come now and tells that the couple are here for their honeymoon. Ian, while trying to cook his food faster, accidentally burns it, and a big fire starts in the cooking pan. Nick puts a lid on the pan to stop the fire, and Monica comes to help him. Ian gets scared and goes to his room and opens a window and throws his luggage outside. When others are trying to open windows, Ian goes outside and takes his luggage to run from there. He starts walking but sees something in black is standing in front of him and he feels scared. He goes back to the cabin and meets Austin and tells him he saw some sort of animal like a bear. Austin says this part of jungle does not have any animal and Nick comes and tells Ian to clean the pan. At night, Ian is unable to sleep and looks anxious, and next morning Monica asks him if he is okay. Ian says he is fine and Nick tells him to be ready so they can leave with Monica and Austin for trek. Ian tries to avoid going with them, but Nick gives him his new pair of socks for his blisters. He says the socks will comfort him and Ian thanks him, and they all leave for their trek. While walking, Monica tells Ian how Austin proposed to her and decides to take some selfies with Ian. Ian is forced to take some photos and Nick tries to catch some fish with his hands and others rest. Austin says they haven't seen any birds or animals after entering the jungle, and Ian says the weasels eats other birds' egg. Nick drinks some river water and others tell him not to do so as it may have insects, but he says he has a strong stomach. Others ask Ian if he has a girlfriend, but Ian says he was married but is now separated and alone. Ian decides to go to toilet and goes in the jungle and has a panic attack answering personal questions. He notices some red marking on a tree and sees it as blood and goes and tells others about it. They say it must be some animal that is hurt, and they decide to continue their trek. Later, while walking, Ian feels something is following them and asks Austin if he can see a black figure. Austin says he can't see anything, and others come and say the same and feel it must be a goat or pig. Ian says because of light reflection, he must be seeing things, and they decide to continue their trek. They arrive at a hut and decide to spend the night there, and Ian notices some bags are already here. Nick hopes these bags belong to some beautiful girls as they are pink in color, and Austin finds a guitar. At night they dance and play the guitar, and Nick tells Ian that maybe Monica likes him, and they are in an open marriage. At night Ian is unable to sleep again and decides to go outside for a walk, but Nick finds him. He asks if Ian is okay and offers him some sleeping pills, and Ian agrees and takes the pills. Nick says he is having stomach ache and takes some medicine for it and asks Ian why he is worried. Ian says he's tired and just wants to sleep, hence he came to a quiet place like this, but his brain isn't letting him sleep. He keeps thinking what all wrong things he has done in his life and feels he is a weak person. When Nick goes to sleep, Ian decides to search the bags and finds a digital camera in it. He checks the photos and finds it belongs to two girls, and in one photo, he sees Nikki is also in the photo. He feels something is wrong and tries to wake others but falls down and goes to sleep because of the pills. Next morning, Ian wakes up and Monica asks if he is okay, but Ian is scared and tells her he needs to show her something. He takes the camera and tells Nick must have done something to the girls in pictures. Ian asks Nick where the girls are and tells everyone he saw a picture of Nick in the camera. He tries to switch the camera but finds the battery is dead and says he saw Nick looking at the girls in the picture. Ian says Nick must have killed the girls since they haven't returned back previous day. Others tells him to calm down, but Ian says Nick even tried to drug him with sleeping pills at night. Nick is angry on Ian and says he asked for the pills. Ian asks how Nick meet him if he has a head in the trek as seen in the photo. Nick says he went back to the car park to get something, but Ian asks why didn't their paths cross. Nick is angry on Ian and says he didn't murder anyone, and suddenly we see the girls have come back. The girls say they got lost at night and spent the night in the caves, and Ian quietly places their camera on a table. Ian asks the girls if they know Nick, but they say no, and Ian decides to quietly leave alone from there. He goes outside but feels guilty for his behavior with Nick and goes inside to talk to him. He apologizes to him and says he always thinks the worst-case scenario and he shouldn't have looked at the camera. Nick tells him not to worry and understands his situation since Ian hasn't been sleeping well. He forgives him and says he is getting good vibes from one of the girls and feels happy about it. Later, Ian also apologizes to Monica and Austin, and they tell him to relax and says these things happen. The two girls decide to go on a different path, and others continue their trek and arrive at a signboard. Monica and Austin decide to visit the waterfall and say their goodbye to others and leave from there. Ian tells Nick they wanted to be alone and enjoy, hence they went to waterfall and they continue their trek to the forest. After walking for some time, Ian tells Nick they are lost since he can't find the trek path. Nick tells him not to worry and follow him in straight line and says going back would take many hours. After some time, Nick agrees that they are lost and says they need to spend the night in tent. Ian is not happy to hear this and saves him from a bear trap, and Nick thanks him. Later, when Nick is doing toilet, Ian notices some black thing is watching them from behind a tree. He tells Nick to hurry and asks him he saw something watching them, but Nick says he didn't. Nick says he is already in pain because of his stomach and suddenly hears the water from the waterfall. They run and find the waterfall and realize they walked the wrong path and decide to find hut since it is getting dark. They find the correct path, but Ian says they need to go back, since he is feeling something bad will happen. Nick tells him not to worry and gives him his torch, and they decide to walk fast and reach the hut. While walking, Ian trips and the torch falls down a pit, and Nick asks him to get it since it is expensive. Ian is not happy but decides to go down to find the torch, and when he gets the torch he notices something. A big black creature is standing there, and Ian gets scared and runs from there and finds Monica and Austin. He tells Nick and others that something was following him and asks Austin if he was down there trying to scare him. Austin says no, and later at the hut, others discuss that something is wrong with Ian and he keeps imagining things. Ian tells them he is not lying and he saw something big which was black and scary and it was chasing him. The others don't believe him and say Ian must get some sleep and decide next morning Nick will go with Ian and drop him at car park. Next day they leave for car park and after some walking take a break for water and eating. Ian apologizes that because Nick has to leave and feels sorry and calls himself a loser. Nick tells him not to think much and feels stomach ache and decides to go to bathroom. Sometime later, when Nick does not come back, Ian gets worried and goes to look for him and gets scared on seeing something. Austin and Monica see Ian come running towards them and get scared and ask him, "Where is Nick?" Ian says no one believed him and now the creature has killed and eaten Ian and asks them to return. They don't believe him and Austin shows Ian a knife and says he will kill Ian if he follows them. They walk towards the car park and stop to drink water, but suddenly something attacks Monica. She is pulled in the bushes and Austin runs to save her and finds Ian standing near a tree. He asks him about Monica and Ian shows her body. Austin runs towards her and sees Monica is dead. Austin gets angry and starts hitting Ian and goes after him, but his leg gets trapped in a bear trap. Ian tries to help him with a stone to free his leg and suddenly they see a big black creature come. The big bird pulls Monica's body in the bushes and Ian and Austin are shocked to see it. Ian helps Austin walk and they decide to go to the hut and spend the night there to hide from the bird. At night, Ian locks the doors and finds an axe and Austin says the bird will come for them at night since it is hungry. He apologizes to Ian for thinking he was crazy and suddenly they hear a big loud noise at the door. The bird has come and repeatedly bangs on the door and breaks it down and comes in. We see the bird has a big long beak and is carnivorous and more than 6 feet tall. Austin tries to distract the bird and calls it towards himself and the bird attacks him and he falls down. Ian tries to grab the axe and hits the bird which makes it angry and it stabs Austin in his eye and kills him. The bird attacks Ian with his beak, but he grabs the bird from behind and closes its beak. Ian and the bird fight and Ian manages to grab the bird's neck and strangles it. He lies on top of the bird and chokes it to death and feels sad for Austin and others. Next morning he walks back to his car and finds the car park sign and cries in happiness. Suddenly some blood falls on his head and sees the girls from the hut are also killed and runs from there. He sees another black bird and gets scared and quietly crawls from there and finds its eggs. He realizes there are many such birds here and quickly runs from there towards the exit. Suddenly, he is attacked by another bird which stabs him in the leg and Ian runs from there and finds his car. He tries to open his car but he has lost its key, so he runs towards the road and starts walking. He finds a car is coming, so Ian stops the car and asks for help.